The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, folks. Depending on where you're logging in from, one of those will just about make sense. Welcome back to another great episode of our Best Practices webinar series with 7SIGNAL. I see a lot of you have joined early today, about 40, 50 of you all. So if you'd like to, please let us know where you're logging in from. For me, today I am in the Cleveland headquarters office, and I am joined today by Dave Hallis and Jim Vada. How are you guys today?
Doing great from beautiful Kent, Ohio.
Awesome.
And I'm well as also from beautiful Cincinnati, Ohio.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys very much for being here. I see a lot of you dropping in here. We have Ronald joining us from St. Louis. We have Chris joining us from Texas. Welcome, Chris. We have Brian joining us from Copenhagen, Denmark. Thanks for being here, Brian. And I see a lot of you.
Gentleman from India there, where
Yes.
According to Google, it is 9:30 at night. So appreciate joining us in the evening.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us. And I see a lot more of you dropping that in there. Feel free to continue doing so, and we will go ahead and get started. So we are 7SIGNAL, the leader in wireless experience monitoring, and we have a pretty packed presentation today, so we will go ahead and move forward here. We have a great topic here, Introduction to IEEE 802.11bf Wireless LAN Sensing. And as I mentioned, our special guest here today is Dave Hallis, and we are joined by Jim Vada yet again to really dive into this topic and assist with the Q&A at the end of today's presentation. So we'll go ahead and get started. A couple of announcements. For those of you who have recently joined, these will all sound familiar, so just bear with me here. But we do partner with CWNP for every single one of our webinars. So if you're interested in receiving a certificate as you pursue CE credits, just drop us a message and we can send one over to you per request. We also send out a 7SIGNAL newsletter every other Wednesday. So if you aren't currently receiving that and would like to, we will drop the link to receive those as well in the chat here. We also host a product tour every single Friday at 12 noon Eastern at go.7signal.com/tour, and that link to register will also be dropped in the chat here if you care to do so. We post all of our slides from each presentation to our Twitter account, so check that out later this afternoon and give us a follow at 7SIGNAL. But if you aren't on Twitter and would still like access to today's presentation, all of you should receive a follow-up email tomorrow with the link to today's recording and to the slides as well. We also post, as I said, our recording to our YouTube channel. So that will be available later today as well, in addition to all of our previous archived webinars. So you can go back and rewatch some of your favorite topics. And if you are able to, go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We are gearing up to give out some 7SIGNAL merchandise to any YouTube subscribers in the near future. So stay tuned for more information there. Really exciting announcement here. We have our first virtual user group of 2021 coming up on Wednesday, February 17th from 10:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern. So we'll go ahead and drop that registration link in here as well. This is a great way for us to link with industry experts, peers, customers, to really learn and gather together to talk about how to elevate your organization's Wi-Fi performance initiatives. We'll also dive into the 7SIGNAL product roadmap, and we will hear from some special guests, including an IDC analyst. So this will be a great way to also dive into the business aspects of this, which reaches all different levels of your organization as well. So invite your peers, invite your colleagues, and you'll hear some more information about this in the coming weeks. And as I mentioned, you will hear from an IDC analyst at our virtual user group, which branches off of the recent IDC white paper that we have been featured in, the business value of 7SIGNAL for optimizing enterprise wireless connectivity. And just like our other links that we will be dropping in the chat here, we will drop this as well, so you can go ahead and access this report. And lastly, we have been featured in the Gartner 2020 Market Guide for Digital Experience Monitoring. Really proud excited about this. We've been recognized as a representative vendor for Mobileye, and we'll give you access to this as well if you care to do a little bit more research here. All right, giving you a little history about 7SIGNAL. We were established in 2007 in Helsinki, Finland, and we're now headquartered in Cleveland, Ohio. We're really proud of the 1 billion data points that we're analyzing daily, in addition to the 5 million devices that we're monitoring daily. We have over 200 customers, over 30 partners, and 14 patents, which goes to show that the technology you see from us at 7SIGNAL, you are only going to see from us at 7SIGNAL. Additionally, we are certified in over 40 countries and are GDPR compliant, which means that we take data and privacy very seriously for all of our users across the world. And as I mentioned, we are the leader in wireless experience monitoring, and we're here because the digital experience matters. And usually when you have a negative digital experience, it bubbles up to one of these top 7 Wi-Fi problems here on the left, such as congestion, coverage loss, roaming issues, and more. And how we're able to detect those Wi-Fi problems that are giving you issues is by running active and passive tests on the edge of the network from the outside in, looking for things like latency and jitter, adapter and driver issues, throughput, etc. We are able to provide, as I said, on the edge of the network, full visibility into the user experience through Mobileye and Sapphire Eye. And we also remain completely AP and device agnostic. So those great tools that you already have installed, we are incredibly complementary with as well. A little bit further here, if you look at your typical enterprise LAN infrastructure here on the right, as I mentioned, you've got great technologies already installed on the network, giving you really useful feedback and data, such as your Riverbed, Aruba, Cisco, AppNeta, and more. But we pick up where they leave off, moving into a different space with first Mobileye. Mobileye can be installed on any mobile device, giving you full visibility into the user experience. It can be installed on, as I said, your laptops, your mobile phones, your Zebra scanners, your workstation on wheels, and more, giving you that insight and visibility from the edge of the network. We also have Sapphire Eye, which are the sensors for service level quality and RF visibility. And through this combination, you're really able to gain visibility into that wireless experience network environment, and that you just can't get anywhere else. Additionally, with a lot of us on the line here working from home, we don't have that enterprise LAN infrastructure, so it's not as relevant and useful to us. We need visibility into our home networks of how that Wi-Fi is performing, such as if you're living in a house with other users on the network, if you're in a multi-tenant apartment, if you're working remotely from a coffee shop, we're able to get visibility into the Wi-Fi performance on those networks as well, making sure that you're still staying connected. And as I've said many times, and will continue to say as we move into the new year, work from home is here to stay. A couple of us are probably on the line here today working from home. Some of us are in the office, splitting time. So we still need to stay connected to our work because it is mission critical when we're from home as well. So we're able to give you that visibility through Mobileye, keeping you connected in the midst of all of these unprecedented changes. All right, that was a mouthful. Thank you for letting me run through all of this before diving into today's presentation. But before we begin, we're going to do a trivia question that Dave provided us today and see how you all do here. Jim and Dave, can you see this question up?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, true or false? The work in IEEE 802.11bf wireless LAN sensing is intended to improve the detection of available Wi-Fi access points. See a lot of you dropping answers in. I'll give you a couple more seconds here, and we will go ahead and close this out. All right, Dave, how did we do today?
That was very close. It's and the correct answer is false, which was just eked out. So that was actually okay.
Yeah, I think a lot of people just took a guess.
Yeah.
And so good opportunity for learning today.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for participating in our trivia. I am going to go ahead and pass the controls over here to our guest, Dave Hallis, as he gets set up for our presentation.
Okay. Kelsey and Jim, are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So the answer, what exactly are they doing? This is for motion and gesture sensing, which I know I've seen some demos, and I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. That you might have had something where you have a light, outdoor light, and the deer comes walking past, and as the deer walks out, that the light turns on. Or you drive your car up and the light turns on. It's the same type of thing. But this is actually using the 802.11 equipment. So about myself, I'm a solutions engineer here at 7SIGNAL, CWNA certified. Many years in product development, solutions engineering, and also in standards development. Past life at Cisco, I was recognized as a Cisco innovator. I have been involved in 802.11, the standards group. For instance, I chaired 802.11i. So people familiar with WPA and WPA2, that's where that comes from. That's a well-known one. A lesser-known one was the 802.11ah, which was for sub-1 gigahertz operation. And that's, if you've ever heard of Halo, that's where it comes from, 802.11ah. It didn't really take off, so I'm still rooting for it every so often. And then I was also involved with the formation of the Wi-Fi Alliance, back then it was known as WECA, and I have a number of patents. Some of the agenda I thought I'd kind of get into is, because this might be a little bit of a mystery when we talk about motion, gesture, and how does that have to do with 802.11. So I thought first kind of give us some background as to Wi-Fi signals that you currently detect, and then also something that's kind of related, which would be a location sensing. And then, so if we already have that, well, then how's that different than this? And then kind of discuss the motion and gesture use cases and how they differ. And then kind of get into, well, what exactly, how is this going to be done? Kind of give you an idea of, talk about what the channel models, channel changes, and just kind of give an example. And then also kind of talk about the 802.11 process. So the one thing I wanted to kind of say, get ahead of time, is when I talk about review 802.11 process, the thing that I'll mention there is this is very early on the process, which you'll see then. So a lot of this stuff, I'll kind of give you, I'm on purpose being a little bit vague because the direction really isn't quite set yet, but I just kind of hopefully that this will still age well. So common Wi-Fi signals that and detection. Obviously, that the client can detect the access point, right? So you got the beacons that are kind of going out, and then there's a probe request and a probe response that goes out. And so then clients can also detect the signal strength of the AP. And that can be useful because you can kind of say, oh, I've sent the probe request, the probe response I've got from AP1. For instance, the green one is much stronger. So why don't I associate with that access point? If everything's equal, it might make sense for me to go to the closest one. So that's a common signal that we're able to kind of see, and most people are familiar with that. The other thing is that you could use that signal strength to then determine like a location. You might have seen some systems like this where you've kind of come up with a map and then you say, well, this is where all my APs are located. Now, if this is where all my APs are located, now the signal strength of a client, well, if I could hear it real well from, one access point, then it must be closest to that. When you kind of get a triangulation of it. besides that, you can use when the packet was arrived. For instance, I kind of mentioned if you send out a probe request, you get a probe response. There's other exchanges, which I didn't kind of get into the details here, but there are some exchanges that you can kind of go out and do, and then use that a time of arrival to then kind of get a sense of location as well. So you could kind of use the signal strength, you could use the packet time of arrival, and you can kind of figure out where the location is. There's also another task group that is currently working, which is 11AZ, which is next generation positioning. I didn't actually kind of get into it here, other than to say that there is some kind of work going on in the same area. Sorry about that. Oh well. And
is that your Ring doorbell with another wine delivery, Dave?
No, that's just, I think that's my mom calling to tell me to sit up straight or something. The other thing that was kind of going on, and I did another webinar, which was in 11bc, which is in hand broadcast traffic. And what those types of devices could do is that same type of information. They can kind of say, well, I want this information. I don't want to send a packet, the client to send a packet to the server. What I want is to send out a packet. It's not even associated. The access points should receive it and send that type of information over to the server. For instance, what time did it arrive? What was the signal strength? All this type of metadata, and then maybe also the packet itself. Then send it over to the server. The server then can kind of figure out, okay, this is where that device must be located. So, well, why is it that, if we're able to kind of do positioning and there's some work going on there, and there's some existing work already, well, then what exactly are we talking about? And here what we're talking about is proximity and also some motion that can go on. And really the previous slides that we were just kind of going through here, what we're talking about was an actual 802.11 device transmitting and being able to receive these types of packets. And so it's kind of active and knowing about that active device. For proximity and gesture, we don't want to put a 802.11 device on the hand just to detect that there's some gesture going on or that you're close to your laptop. We just want to be able to detect this without, it's kind of like a passive type of thing. So being able to pick this up so that the actual device that's being measured is not part of the transmission or reception. So the proximity use cases are, I'm just kind of getting into some of the use cases that they've kind of brought up. And so some of these are things like, you kind of come up to something like a door, and maybe the door opens for you. You show up into a certain room and the lights turn on. If you were in a hotel and you walked up to the elevator, instead of waiting until somebody actually presses the button to call the elevator, the system kind of figure out, well, maybe we should try to get an elevator ready for you. So it's kind of to also other things like maybe doing some facial recognition. If you actually get some fine resolution on it, that you can actually do some types of things like that. Oh, there another use case presentation from the group. The one that I kind of saw, which kind of piqued my interest, was that it's to the upper left. There's a person that falls down, and say you're elderly or living at home by yourself, and you wanted to be able to. It'd be nice if the system would kind of like tell you, hey, it looks like somebody fell down, and maybe send off a notification that maybe this person needs some help. Also, there's kind of things. Now, the example that they kind of mentioned was that they kind of say, here you're walking away from the TV, and it says decrease the TV volume. I want the exact opposite. If I'm going to the refrigerator to get something to drink, like pour some wine or something like that, I want the TV volume to go up. So maybe a little bit different from their use case, but very similar. Also, intrusion detection. That's where a lot of motion detection use cases kind of come from. It is that you kind of end up detecting that somebody's moving around and everybody should be in bed. That way, it's either an intruder or the kids didn't actually go to bed. They're trying to sneak around downstairs. So you kind of know that they should kind of go downstairs and tell those kids to go to bed. Also, kind of like detect if somebody's kind of going into a different room. You can kind of say maybe have the lights automatically turn off, turn on. So those are I would say the biggest classifications of use cases that they mentioned within that task group. There were some other ones, but they all kind of fit into that same type of thing. So now you kind of say, well, if this is kind of going on, if you're not really a transmitter, I thought it'd be useful to kind of give you an idea of what's kind of going on. So I think that the image that I kind of showed there is that I think most people are familiar with like submarines. Everybody watched the World War II movies where there's the active ping and then you kind of try to figure out where that submarine is located. You kind of think of it as the same type of thing that's going on. But you can, by measuring the channel, be able to pick up location and movement. And the key thing here is that you don't want that submarine to actually count on that submarine and have a Wi-Fi device on it. Most submarines are trying to make sure that they're not being detected. And here it's really about being able to pick up the channel changes. I think that some people might say, well, what the heck are you talking about as far as channel changes? So I was looking for like an easy example that people would be familiar with. I'm sure that a lot of people that you probably have heard of this, that there's the Doppler effect. Most nerds are kind of familiar with this. And that if you're a train and you're kind of going, the train is arriving towards you and then it's going to pass you, you're probably familiar that this makes a different sound. So I do have a audio clip that I wanted to play for you, just so you got to get a sense if you weren't familiar with it. So the thing, hopefully you're able to hear that. And the thing to note there is it's not just that the sound is getting louder, although yeah, it does get louder, just kind of like the signal strength, but also that the pitch changes. As the train or the car horn is coming towards you, the pitch is going higher, and then as it's going away, it's going lower. And you could actually hear that. If we were to take a look at it from there's a common graphic that you'd actually end up seeing. And the reason for this is that there's a change in the frequency that's observed by, if you're sitting there in your car, with the trains kind of going past you, that you can kind of see that in the direction, it's all kind of bunched up at the front and it's moving, being spread out in the back. And that's, so this is kind of like an effect of a channel change. So you might say, well, I don't have a train moving in front of me. I was just hoping at proximity. It's the same type of thing, that if you're this same type of changes, whether it's a frequency change or a phase shift change, something in the channel is going to change when you actually come in front of like a screen or a Wi-Fi transmitter and receiver. And actually, that in the past, the Wi-Fi engineers are very familiar with this, and they actually have to kind of like design around it, right? They kind of have to say, well, actually, that they build up these channel models, and they say, well, this is based off of this channel model that will say that the equipment has to be able to work, that the Wi-Fi has to work even though that somebody is not in front of the screen, and then they walk up to the screen. They still expect the Wi-Fi to actually work. And so that's actually kind of built in. This is kind of like reversing it and saying, oh, not only that we're going to design the system so that it's able to work with these channel changes, we actually want to detect these channel changes so that it could tell us something useful, like motion and proximity detection. Another thing that's going to you kind of think about, and the task group is already talking about this as well, is, you know, do you need one client to be able to make these channel change measurements, or do you want to have a synchronized mode of operation so that, oh, not only one antenna kind of going off and doing like radar, but a coordinated effort. So the trade-off here is that these coordinated measurements are more complicated. They're going to eat up more bandwidth. You know, obviously that there's going to be the communication to say, hey, I need to coordinate this activity, but that also does provide for better resolution. So it does look like they're going for that more either multi-static type of operation where you'd have a coordinated effort, so that if not your laptop is getting involved. So most likely, you know, how would this relate to Wi-Fi equipment and how it'd be done? That most likely it's, you know, the left might be, oh, this only gets done on an access point, versus on the right, the multi-static. This is where, oh, not only is the AP doing something, but maybe all the clients that you have around it. If they all are doing it, then they'll kind of give you a better idea. If you've got access points in the different rooms, if you got multi-access point type of a house or environments, that could kind of also give you some better idea of how things are going as far as movement and so forth. So this is where I kind of mentioned at the very beginning. This is a slide that's 802.11 kind of goes as far as the development process. The first thing that happens is that there has to be some interest. You do some socializing of ideas. And once you've kind of done that and you think that you've got enough interest to move forward, then you actually write up a project authorization request. And when that gets approved, that's when a task group gets started. After that, then they actually start working on the draft. And really where this group is at is they did do the PAR and they got it approved. But that's about it. So that's why I was kind of saying I don't want to go too far into the details, because there isn't really even a draft yet. It's not even a preliminary one. So they're still trying to get some type of agreements. That there is a, you know, they're trying to work out the process that they're going to go forward with. I think they kind of got that done as far as what they would end up doing, kind of coming up with use cases, coming up with a channel model, and then coming up with a functional description of what they wanted to do. So that's kind of being worked on now. After they kind of do that, then they'll start working on basically things would then evolve into a pre-draft, and from there that things will move forward. But things are very early. Projected timeline, there's no time with theirs. This is an educated guess. Obviously, that's in 802.11 has been doing this for a while. They can kind of get a sense. They can kind of look at other projects, and they can say, well, is this kind of like this project? And then try to come up with timelines. But it is just a guess. The other thing that I thought was useful is that you can, if you wanted to, just download the PAR, because it kind of describes the scope of the project. But there's a section where it says additional explanatory notes. So I read that out. That's this is actually using the PHY and the MAC features to obtain channel measurements. And the measurements are obtained for wireless sensing to enable applications of presence detection and gesture classifications, amongst others. So that's definitely where they're kind of like said that they're trying to go. And you know how they do that is to do these channel measurements. And that's it. So with that, I want to turn it back over to Kelsey and Jim for questions and so forth.
Thanks, Dave. That was really cool. And I want to invite all the attendees that have a question. I certainly have my own slate of questions to use the Q&A panel and let us know what you're thinking. Dave, one thing I noticed in one of your slides, it mentioned the 60 gigahertz band. So is this going to be a technology that we can use in all the bands supported by 802.11?
Yes, the PAR does actually mention the different bands. I did notice that it didn't do the sub 1 gigahertz, but they did do specifically call out 60 gigahertz. And the thing that I think that as I was reading through the presentations, it did look like not only that, but they do want to make sure that it's the 2.4, the 5 gigahertz, 6 gigahertz, and I believe it was also 2.4. But the other thing that I was noticing was that it looks like the 60 gigahertz would also kind of add resolution. So you might, as this kind of goes forward, that you might end up seeing that, oh, you could kind of get much better resolution on things. For instance, you know, gaming might lead itself well to like a 60 gigahertz. Versus some of the other technologies, and then there all of a sudden that would also provide some additional resolutions. But that still kind of remains to be seen. It might be that, you know, they all kind of turn out to be the same, but it is definitely within scope.
So tell me if you think this makes sense, because the way I'm kind of, the sort of idea I have for an analogy is like a security system motion sensor. You know, if you have line of sight to it and you're close enough, you will trigger it. And you know, 60 gigahertz probably has similar behavior, but the lower band, 6 gigahertz, 5 gigahertz, 2.4, you could trigger the you could trigger the Wi-Fi, you know, WLAN sensing with, you know, by being several rooms away because of the nature of that those bands and how they, you know, have better propagation through materials, whereas 60 gigahertz is more like line of sight in the same room with the AP kind of stuff. Does that make sense?
That makes sense to me. And that's basically where I kind of, if I had to guess, I'd kind of see this is that maybe 60 gigahertz is able to go much further in resolution to provide some use cases such as like facial recognition. I mean, I'd still have to kind of see that actually working to determine, but yeah, I could definitely agree with you that could enable that type of differentiation.
So, question from Ray. He says location tracking seems to be moving towards Bluetooth. Does this mean that there will be a resurgence in Wi-Fi location tracking? And I guess my comment would be that I think that's a pretty wide open market. There's BLE, there is 802.11 base tracking, including proprietary stuff. There's the new fine timing measurement that came to us in 802.11mc, that roll-up amendment. And now ultra-wideband as an RTLS solution is really gaining ground as we see that getting added to smartphones. And then there's all this like infrared stuff that's proprietary and 900 megahertz stuff that's proprietary that's all over the place. So it seems like, you know, there's a solution for every use case.
Yeah, I think that the way I kind of take it is it kind of gets into cost and what type of resolution that you need. As the Wi-Fi, if you could do proximity with the current Wi-Fi product, for instance, my laptop, you know, if you buy a laptop, it's going to have Wi-Fi in it. And that same hardware, if that same hardware can give you that proximity, now you're not incurring an additional cost. And does it do a sufficient job at what your use case, you know, requires? Then all of a sudden, you know, you don't have to add additional hardware. So obviously the system cost to the user is going to come down. Now, if it turns out that that's not the case, then what you end up doing is then you start adding, you know, oh, you have to, you need this, you have this additional use case. For instance, maybe you're gaming and you actually do need in this certain game facial recognition and so forth. And so therefore, okay, that maybe that does require an additional purchase. So it's kind of like a trade-off. I agree with you that there's different technologies that could kind of be doing these same types of things. And then it also kind of like, well, does it actually, if you've got the, if it's location, if it's device tracking, you could already kind of do some of that with Wi-Fi now, because it could be an active transmitter. You could just say, well, I know what the signal strength is. It must be over there. And then also the time of arrival type of detection could be done. So it really, to me, in my mind, it has to do with Wi-Fi already has market penetration, right? If that device is already able to do additional functionality and not increase the cost, then it makes, then the ask you question is, well, do you need something else or not?
Yeah, and it's a different use case from RTLS. Remember, it's about motion and gesture sensing, not necessarily just where in the physical space is something located.
Yep.
And that opens up a lot of new use cases. So, if you know a Wi-Fi client is stationary, that can inform, the QoS that you apply to frames as they enter the AP's buffer and the power save operation, and so on and so forth. And if you know a client is in motion, and you can couple that with location, it's moving away from the AP. And I'm just thinking about associated clients, but then that can inform, roaming behavior. Maybe you can say, I know this client's moving. I have RTLS info that tells me what directions it's going. Now I can send it a targeted 802.11v BSS transition frame and say, because I know you're headed towards this AP over here, so get ready to roam to that AP on that channel.
Yeah.
There's a lot this could open up, I think.
Yeah, the other thing is that the big use cases, to me, it's kind of like there's the use case. What are those use cases that really take off? Some of the ones that we kind of talked about, it's like, well, it's like anything else. A lot of times when I look at it, people mention these use cases, and it's like, yeah, they never get going nowhere. Or is that use case really something that's going to take off? And then you have to kind of match up. Okay, this is the use case. This is where it would actually be useful. Does it really take off? I think a lot of things come together. So I'm not trying to poo-poo any other type of technology like Bluetooth. You might find that, the given use case that actually takes off, maybe it does kind of work out well for Bluetooth because, for instance, if it's pairing or something like that, you really have to kind of look at the entire thing to figure out if it's going to take off or not.
Yeah, and one of the early questions I had was about the passive measurement with an unassociated device. Does that have to be a Wi-Fi device, or could it be any object really that's in motion that a Wi-Fi device with this capability could sense?
Well, yeah, that's the thing that really kind of got me was when I was watching the videos. This is like, the example of somebody falling down. Yeah, that person falling down is they don't have a Wi-Fi device on them.
You're not tracking their smartphone, you're tracking them.
Right.
Yeah.
The entire thing I found very interesting. So I'm not a soothsayer. I'm not really trying to tell you whether I think this is going to take off or not. I just found it very interesting from that perspective of, hey, they can actually do this. And then as I started thinking about it, I'm like, well, actually, yeah. Some of the other thing that hit me was the thing I mentioned earlier was the things that the Wi-Fi designers were working on, which they knew about, but they had to make sure, it was for the fact of trying to get the Wi-Fi to work that you had to be aware of, and kind of creating that channel model, knowing that the channel does change as you approach or as you're moving. Those types of things do come into account when they're talking about the channel model. Here, they're just kind of flipping it and saying, oh, actually, that type of information could be very useful for these other types of things like gesture and motion detection. So I was like, oh, I found it very interesting.
Comment here from Ray. He says this technology may not be practical for outdoors. What do you think, Dave?
I think that the channel models are definitely different from outdoor to indoor, definitely. And so that's, I think that, yes, you would have to kind of like look at those types of things. I think that you would find, for instance, some of those use cases, for instance, the proximity. Me coming in front of the laptop, I don't think that's going to matter too much. I think that, I think it will matter, but I think it'll still work if you're outdoors versus indoors. And then you might find that some things like 60 gigahertz might work well indoors versus maybe outdoors. So part of it is I'm agreeing with you that with the different bands, they do kind of create, usually especially like for instance, 802.11ah, we did come up with a indoor channel model and an outdoor channel model. And so now it's being able to detect those types of thing changes. So I agree with you that there's going to be an impact, but I think that most of these will still work.
Yeah. Good question here from Mohammed. And I will paraphrase, but you know, with other RTLS, well, with 802.11 based, you know, RTLS today, there's usually a design requirements to have very high density of APs. You need to have APs near the perimeter of the building to triangulate the clients inside. Do you think we'll have, so what he's asking, do you think there'll be similar impacts to the design requirements from this technology?
Yes. And that's basically what I was trying to get into as far as and it kind of depends on the use case. And I could see that there was a thread within the group that was kind of bringing up this discussion, which was, if your proximity, all I need to know is, am I sitting next to my laptop? Well, can't you just do that with one? Do you really need a coordinated effort for that? I think my answer would be no. I would think that you'd be able to just be able to do one device. But that if you're trying to track, there was the other use case where it was kind of like a floor plan of a house, and you're trying to detect somebody walking through the house. And then I did see a demo that they kind of mentioned. Now, obviously, this is proprietary technology, but somebody walking into like a bathroom and then slipping and falling down. And that they mentioned, specifically, they did mention that this was the type of sensing that they were doing was by multiple devices, not strictly one device. So I think that you will see, and it kind of depends on the use case and that the group itself is trying to make it so that it's a type of coordinated activity. And here, that it's not strictly, you know, when you're talking about real-time location tracking, it's kind of like, oh, maybe there's one device, and then you have multiple APs that are picking it up. Instead, this would be, as I see it, would be that it's not just that the APs and the device that you're trying to detect are being involved in the conversation. It would be that maybe you have a refrigerator. Refrigerator, it's a client. It's not an access point. But that refrigerator, because it's got Wi-Fi and it's a client, it's able to contribute to the channel sensing. The printer, you know, Wi-Fi's got printers that have Wi-Fi on them. That device can also, so it's kind of like a little bit different from the devices that would typically be involved in that detection.
That's interesting. Last question here, and then I think we'll wrap up, Kelsey. But Ronald has a really good question, and we probably don't have the answer to this today. But is this group considering the privacy concerns this is going to raise? I mean, I'm talking about being able to sense through walls, through buildings, and detect if people are moving around and where they're going. Certainly privacy issues there. I
think there are. I'm not sure how much of the security concerns that they've kind of brought up, but I agree with you. That's one of the presentations mentioned wireless broadband alliance, I believe, and I think in their doc that they did kind of mention security concerns. And if you do get the slides, then you'll see that the document that had to do with the 60 gigahertz. And from that presentation that they kind of showed you that you could detect a person behind the wall, and sort of the images that they show currently, that might improve over time. And they were kind of talking about facial recognition. So it wasn't like you could see the person's face behind the wall, but you could see that there's a torso. You could see that where the arms are located. So any of those documents where I kind of give you the link to it, you might watch one of them. I believe it is also that one that was related to 60 gigahertz. There's also some presentations in it, so that they kind of show you, hey, I could show you that's the hand moving, and so forth. That there are, I think, a couple of demos that they showed.
Yeah, I think if this is a project that really gets legs, that'll be an ongoing conversation as it continues to develop, for sure.
I agree.
All right, Kelsey, I think that wraps it up.
All right, awesome. A lot of great questions today, so thank you for dropping those in the chat here. Just a reminder, we will post the slides to our Twitter account, and you should receive them via email. But if you do have any more questions, we're happy to answer them for you. Just send us a message, and we can respond via email. So thank you to everyone for joining us for our second webinar of 2021, and a huge thank you to Dave Hallis and Jim Vada for being here again today. Thank you, guys.
Well, thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Cool topic.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone, and we hope to see you at next week's webinar. Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Jim.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.